Hello everyone, my name is Carson Leach and I will be presenting Bitcoin. For this presentation, I'll be covering the origins of Bitcoin, the functions behind it, the benefits and risks associated with its use, the applications in today's marketplace, and we'll look at a few highlights from a second quarter report on the current state of Bitcoin. And finally, I'll leave you with some discussion questions. In October 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper describing what we know as Bitcoin today and the underpinnings associated with its inception. What makes this topic particularly fascinating is that Satoshi is a pseudonym of one individual or a group of individuals, and to this day no one knows who truly created Bitcoin. Bitcoin presents a solution to the double spending problem, which had been the Achilles heel of prior iterations of digital cash. Double spending can be thought of as counterfeit money. However, in this instance, these are duplicates of a digital coin that can be spent on more than one occasion. Bitcoin solves for this through a proof-of-work system called Hashcash. The premise of Bitcoin was to generate a peer-to-peer version of electronic cash that did not rely on trust, or more specifically, a bank or financial intermediary. Decentralization is argued to be the underlying concept of Bitcoin, that it can be produced independent of any central authority such as the Federal Reserve. The picture to the right shows what we would consider a standard bank transaction. However, in a Bitcoin transaction, it would cut out the financial network and have payments go directly from payer to payee. So what exactly is Bitcoin? For starters, the picture to the right describes a simplified overview of the key components to a Bitcoin transaction. It's made up of a few specific components, primarily data miners and the blockchain. Bitcoin is categorized as a type of cryptocurrency. The currency aspect is digital in nature, and crypto refers to the techniques used to regulate and verify the currency across the peer-to-peer network. In the Bitcoin process, data miners are the equivalent to financial intermediaries in credit card transactions. A data miner's primary purpose is to ensure a valid transaction and to store the record of the transaction on the blockchain. As previously mentioned, Bitcoin's main solve is for double spending. This is achieved through a blockchain, which is a shared public ledger that houses all confirmed Bitcoin transactions. You can think of it as a checkbook that everyone can see, although in this instance the checkbook is a collective one, as every Bitcoin can be traced back to the original purchase. And that original purchase, by the way, was for 2 Papa John's pizzas in the amount of 10,000 Bitcoins. Translating Bitcoins into today's money, 10,000 would be the equivalent of $3.3 million for 2 Papa John's pizzas. As a consumer, we are primarily interested in its use. It's a currency that can be spent on goods and services over the internet, although it's limited to companies and suppliers who accept this form of payment. This limited acceptance also helps drive the pricing volatility of Bitcoins that we'll see on the next slide. So why use Bitcoin? Some benefits associated are no single institution can control the exchange. It is in fact decentralized. Government cannot freeze someone's wealth, and the individual holding Bitcoins can choose to use the coin for whatever purpose they want. Another perceived benefit is privacy. Holders of Bitcoins do not publicize their address or any other personal financial information, unlike banks or even data brokers who sell personal information. Bitcoin has no transactional fees and is cheap to use. Again, there is no intermediary to enforce fees. Bitcoin users share in building the network, so they take the burden of transactional costs. Some risks associated are the acceptance and enforcement, which varies by country. Bitcoins are largely not recognized in most countries, and in fact, US is by far and away the leader in companies who currently accept Bitcoin. However, Bitcoins can be refused as form of payment because of the decentralization aspect. So in other words, the government will not be accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment for your student loan debt. The price risk currently for Bitcoins is an unstable market. Businesses that are slow to accept it, the bad press that has invited some insecurity, as well as the variance in price perception across industries, has led to a volatile price point for Bitcoins. In fact, in the time I've spent researching Bitcoins, the price alone has been in between $150 to $300. Lastly, anonymity invites criminal activity, as seen in the examples of Mt. Gox and Silk Road. Mt. Gox was a Bitcoin data mining company who was handling roughly 70% of all Bitcoin transactions in 2013 when their systems were hacked. They had lost 745,000 Bitcoins as a result. And if you remember the recent takedown of Silk Road, it was Bitcoin that funded much of the illegal activities. The anonymous transactions made it increasingly difficult to find who was behind those exchanges. Within the last 5 years, Bitcoin has grown into a full-fledged industry made up of tech startups and a few dominant first movers. As you can see in the chart below, many players have tried to take market share in a particular space within the industry. The use of Bitcoins is typically done through third-party sites such as Gift. Gift has agreements with many leading companies to sell their gift cards, with Bitcoin being the source of payment. Other social storefronts that exist in today's marketplace also accept Bitcoin. Etsy, for example, has vendors who accept Bitcoin as form of payment for their services. CoinDesk, a leading research company in all things Bitcoin, released their quarterly report which highlights trends from the second quarter. Increased investment from venture capitalists continues to shape the economic landscape of Bitcoin. And to illustrate how much interest has been generated, the graph below compares investment dollars of Bitcoin to that of the internet. The report also highlighted other key players such as NASDAQ and IBM, citing their recent involvement into blockchain, the innovation behind Bitcoin. NASDAQ has become the first major exchange operation to use Bitcoin technology as a means of issuing and transferring shares of privately owned companies. Other companies such as IBM, Visa, Citi, and Capital One have invested millions in the blockchain developing company Chain. The impetus behind this investment is to bring more transparent, secure, and low-cost technology to the financial services sector. This wraps up my presentation. I'll leave you with some discussion questions. Thanks for your time.